My name is Rachel Moore. I was born and raised in a small town in Ohio called Delaware. Not the state, just a tiny place where everyone knows each other, and every Sunday starts with coffee at church and ends with dinner at Grandma's. There were 2 daughters in our family. I was the older one, and Sarah the younger. From the very beginning, it seemed simple. I was the head, she was the heart. I read, studied, drew. Sarah? Sarah lit up the room. She'd walk in and everyone would turn. Her laughter was as loud as fireworks on the 4th of July, and I quieter than the first snow in the morning. Mom used to say, "Rachel, be a little more alive. Look at Sarah, she smiles, she connects." Dad would add with a smirk, "Your sister's like a ray of sunshine, and you're like a cloud. A smart one, but still a cloud." And me? I didn't get upset. I just learned to be good. I became the straight-A student, won awards in literature, did everything I could to earn their attention. But it always drifted back to Sarah. When I was 14 and won the regional math competition, Mom missed the ceremony because Sarah had a poetry recital. And that's more important, sweetie, she's on stage. When I turned 16, I got my first part-time job at the library. That same day, Sarah broke a nail. Guess what the family dinner conversation was about? I started to see the pattern. My quietness meant silence. Her noise, celebration. Sarah could come home with a D, and Mom would comfort her with ice cream. I'd bring home an A+ and get a nod. Well, of course, you're our smart one. We expected that. In high school, she was prom queen. I was president of the science club. She went to Orlando with friends. I went to Ohio State's honors program. But guess whose photo was on the living room wall? Yeah, hers. I wasn't jealous. I just wanted to be seen. Not as the other daughter. Not as reliable. Not as, well, you always manage. Just as Rachel. I worked from the age of 16, saved for college, got in on a scholarship. No one came with me to orientation. Sarah was sick, and my parents stayed with her. When I got accepted into a research fellowship at Berkeley, Mom said over the phone, "Oh, Rachel, that's so far away. Are you sure you need to go?" I was 21. Sitting on the campus lawn in California, eating microwave noodles, and for the first time in my life, I felt not loneliness, no, freedom. Because 1,000 miles from home, no one compared me to Sarah. No one expected me to be entertaining. No one said I was too quiet. I just was, and for once that was enough. But you know what's funny? Even from a distance, even through screens, the shadow of comparison didn't go away. On my parents' Facebook, Sarah's photo shoots, her parties, her smile, my diplomas, my awards, my publications ignored. I wanted to ask, what more do I have to do for you to be proud of me? Build a rocket? Win a Nobel? But I didn't ask. Because quiet girls don't ask. We stay silent. And prove ourselves with work, with results, and eventually with choices. I didn't know then that one day those choices would bring me back to that same house, to the same people, and that I'd be the one holding the pen at the auction when they finally understood the price of my silence. But that's later. For now, this is the beginning of my story. The story of the girl they called just the smart one. The one forgotten in the shadow. The one who would one day return not for revenge, but to say, "I was here all along. You just weren't looking." I never thought I'd return to Delaware, Ohio so soon. And definitely not for this reason. Mom passed away from a stroke. 2 months later, Dad was gone to heart failure. At that time, I was in Seattle, working as a UX specialist at a startup trying to reform the government document system. Ironically, I was working on simplifying bureaucracy. But no process in the world could have prepared me for what I heard at the reading of the will. A small law office on Main Street, a room with a worn carpet, the smell of old papers and tea. The lawyer, a man in his 60s, gray-haired, wearing glasses, looks at the papers and adjusts his cuffs. Sarah sits next to me, carefree as ever, wearing a bright floral dress and holding a Starbucks coffee. I'm nervous. She looks like she came for a pedicure. The lawyer begins to read. I, Benjamin John Moore and I, Linda Grace Moore, being of sound mind and memory, bequeath our house at 128 Oak Ridge Lane to our youngest daughter, Sarah Elizabeth Moore. All financial assets, including the savings account at Huntington Bank, the 401k, and insurance payouts, are also transferred to Sarah Elizabeth Moore. The family heirlooms, including Grandma Margaret's ring, the antique locket, and the porcelain set, also pass to Sarah Elizabeth Moore. The world becomes silent for a moment. I hear only my own breathing, and some distant tapping the clock on the wall. I don't believe it, just can't believe it. I turn to the lawyer. "Excuse me, is that all?" He nods calmly. "Yes, no other beneficiaries are mentioned in the will." I swallow air as if learning to breathe again. "Why?" He looks at me sympathetically, as if we're both characters in a bad Hallmark movie. "The cover letter says, 'Sarah has always been closer. She cared for us. She was there.'" I slowly turn my head towards Sarah. She shrugs. "Well, I really was. You left, Rachel. And I stayed. I called. I brought groceries. Dad said he appreciated having me around. That's all there is to it. I don't say a word. Just sit and understand. All my life I tried to earn their love, but it was given to her simply because she was more convenient. I wanted to scream, wanted to run out of that office and out of that script where I was again the one forgotten in the list. But you know what I did? Nothing. I stood up, thanked the lawyer, looked at Sarah, and said just one sentence. "Uh-huh, I always knew you'd choose her anyway." She blinked. "Rachel, why do you have to be like that?" But I was already walking out. Outside, the air smelled of freshly cut grass and summer rain. My hometown, the very place where I was always second best, seemed unchanged after all these years. But I had changed. I stood on the sidewalk with empty hands. No inheritance, no house, no grandma's ring. But inside, I was not empty. Something inside had finally settled. I will no longer ask. I will no longer wait. They made their choice. No, it's my turn. When I returned home to my real apartment on 104th Street in the Upper West Side, the city felt colder than usual. Even though it was still June, even though the Manhattan sky pulsed with light, I felt like it was autumn inside me. I brewed coffee from the machine, listened to the noise of the streets below, and kept hearing the same phrase in my head. Sarah cared. Rachel left. That's it, a simple, convenient summary. The small town of Delaware loves these versions short, clear, without nuance. No one talked about how I transferred money to their account every month with notes like, for pharmacy, for therapy, for care. No one knew that when Dad broke his hip last January, I found a private rehab clinic for him in Columbus and paid $12,000 out of my own savings because insurance only covered the basic program, and I wanted him to be able to walk again. But Sarah, she didn't need that. She needed something else. Thanksgiving photo shoots. Instagram posts with captions like, "Family is everything." Selfies with mom wrapped in a blanket captioned, "So cozy with her on rainy nights." Cherish your parents. Cherish your parents? I never posted a single photo with them. I just paid for their insurance through Blue Cross. No hashtags. No likes. Sarah was the face of care. I was the sponsor. But this is America, right? The brand matters, not who's actually keeping the business afloat. I remember standing by the window on my first night back in New York, looking out over Broadway. Below, the traffic hummed, and a street saxophonist played something jazzy. And at some point, I said out loud to myself, I don't want revenge, but I won't be silent anymore. It wasn't anger. It was something else, determination, maybe. I didn't want to ruin her life. I just wanted to build mine, but now without other people's illusions, without the constant be grateful for whatever you get. The irony was that our parents always taught us to be honest and responsible. And in the end, I was the one who lived by those rules and ended up with empty hands. Sarah? She built a career on emotions. On what looks good on camera. I built mine on systems nobody sees. And, it turned out, nobody values. They said, she deserved it. I thought, I wonder how much deserved costs if you add up the bills from the last 3 years? $300 a month for mom's medications, $650 for upgrading their Medicare plan, $12,000 rehabilitation, $2,100 bathroom repairs with handrails, $7,800 therapy for dad after mom died, $3,500 Sarah's trip to Miami when she was burning out, which I covered with household expenses. Total almost $27,000. Almost the price of a new car. Or a year's rent in Manhattan. But no, none of that matters. Because Rachel left. And Sarah stayed. It's easier for people to believe the version they can post with a Valencia filter. I turned off the lights, lay down, and stared at the ceiling for a long time. I didn't yet know how it would all turn out. But I knew one thing. I would no longer stay in the shadows. Not for any rewards for obedience. They chose her. But I will choose myself. And when the day of that auction finally came, I was ready. Not with rage. Not with revenge. With an Excel spreadsheet. With a lawyer. With a plan. Because if they decided I was never part of the family, then I'd remind them through the paperwork who really kept everything afloat. About 6 months passed. I was working on a new project for a startup in Brooklyn. They were building a platform for remote elderly care. I led the UX side and managed a team of 4. There was a lot of stress, but I loved that feeling, knowing I was building something of my own, without shadows from anyone else, without the constant be like Sarah. One evening, around 8 o'clock, had 7 ins. My phone rang. I had just finished a Zoom call with engineers and was about to close my laptop. The screen showed. Sarah, mobile. I didn't answer right away, I just stared at the screen. It was the first call since the funeral. No thank you, no how are you, not even a Christmas card. Just silence. I pressed accept. Hey Rachel. Her voice was the same. Too bright, a little forced. Hi. A pause the awkward one when both of you realize there's nothing to say, but you have to say something. And then she said, listen, do you want to buy the house? The parents' house. I didn't even understand at first what she meant. Buy it? Yeah, it's just, there's a situation. Justin, you know, he lived with me. Of course I knew. He'd posted a YouTube video, Our Cozy Family Home in Ohio, with her caption, Love and Family Matter Most. So he had some obligations, debts, taxes. Sarah, I interrupted, you put the house up as collateral? Silence. She didn't say yes, but didn't say no either. It's more complicated, she started. We thought we could manage, but the bank is putting the house up for auction in a month, and I thought maybe you'd... Here I just stayed silent. For a minute. 2. I looked at the wall opposite, where my NYU certificate hung, and thought how ridiculous it all was. The house I grew up in. Where I was compared. Where my achievements never meant a tenth of Sarah's smiles. No, it's merchandise. And now she's offering, buy it. Like it's just some garage sale on Craigslist. I exhaled. Good luck, Sarah. And hung up. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay there remembering every room. Mom's porcelain figurines on the shelf. Dad's stamp collection. My first Math Olympiad me certificates probably still in a drawer somewhere. And deep inside, there was a strange feeling. Not anger, not happiness. Something like clarity. They chose to forget me now, the house forgets them. And let Sarah think I just refused. Let her believe I left again. The truth is, I'm just waiting for the right moment. And this time I'll have numbers and a lawyer and a check. No drama. No hashtags. Just cold, hard paper. That they won't be able to ignore. I thought I would forget. Just say good luck. And move on with my life. New York was noisy, projects pressed with deadlines, the subway smelled as usual, and everyone around was building something, rushing, achieving. But a week after the call, I caught myself Googling my old address every night. 423 Maple Street, Canton, Ohio. I looked at the photos of the house, the ones taken by the agent running the auction. The photos were dull, rushed, soulless. The kitchen where I once burned myself with hot cocoa looked like just a corner of a kitchen. The living room where we watched cartoons looked like a storage room with a couch. And suddenly I understood. They didn't care. It wasn't about the bricks. It was about what I always wanted to hear there. We're proud of you. But what I heard was, Sarah would have done it differently. I sat on the couch with a cup of cold coffee and quietly said out loud, "If I come back, it will be on my terms." That same evening, I called a lawyer I knew, Jonathan Carter. We had worked together once on a nonprofit deal. He specialized in real estate. I asked one question. How do you participate in an auction if you're not a relative, just an outside party? He wasn't surprised, just asked, "You want to buy someone's house?" "No," I answered. "I want to take back what's mine." We started with documents, then registration with Stark County's system. I applied as a private investor. A week later, I was approved. I did all this like I wasn't myself, coldly, methodically, like when I used to write code, with a deadline breathing down my neck. I didn't call Sarah, didn't write. On LinkedIn, she posted another "Family is Everything" post with a photo of her and Justin in another house, somewhere in a Cleveland suburb, I think. Caption: "The past stays in the past. Love is what matters." I almost laughed. Love. She loved only her reflection on the screen. And I started loving the silence growing inside me. Every night, I opened Google Docs and made notes. Property appraisal. Risks. Bidding ceiling. I didn't behave like a hurt daughter. I behaved like a businesswoman. And that was my turning point. As a child, I dreamed they'd one day ask me for advice. Now I was preparing to buy what they called Sarah's inheritance. But I didn't want revenge. I just wanted to put a full stop. My full stop. On my terms. I arrived in Canton the night before. The town looked just the same. Old signs, a pharmacy vending machine by CVS, a lonely Family Dollar sign, slightly crooked as if bent by the winds of memories. I rented a room at the Hampton Inn, dropped my things, and simply sat in silence. No television, no laptop, just me and the waiting. The next morning, I put on a simple, strict black dress, pulled my hair into a sleek bun. No makeup except a light lipstick. This wasn't about looks, it was about stance. I wasn't there to impress. I was going to be the period at the end of a long sentence of other people's decisions. The room was smaller than I expected. A small law office, the smell of cheap coffee and plastic folders. In the corner, 3 rows of chairs, a registration desk, and a man in a gray blazer constantly checking documents. On the screen, an address, 423 Maple Street. And then, of course, she was there. Sarah? She walked into the room like it was a school fair. Smile, flashy bag, white blazer with gold buttons. She even waved at me like this was all coincidence, just formality. "Hey, here on business?" "You could say that," I replied. But she didn't get it. Apparently, she thought it would all sort itself out, that the bank wouldn't dare, that Justin would find the money any minute. In her world, consequences happen to other people. Then the process began. The bank representative, a dry man with a thin folder and a tired face, announced the rules. The house at 423 Maple Street will be sold to the participant with the highest allowed bid. 3 other people placed lowering bids. When it was my turn, I raised my hand. I named my amount, the highest, but not absurdist, precise. Pause. The man flips through papers. Winner, Rachel Moore. Silence. I hear Sarah sharply turn around. "Are you kidding?" I turned to her calmly. "No, Sarah, I just bought what's been mine for a long time." Everyone was silent. Even Justin Hay stood a little behind, nervously fidgeting with the zipper on his jacket. I walked to the desk and signed the papers. The bank representative extended his hand. "Congratulations!" "Thank you," I said. No smile, no theatrics, just business. Sarah looked at me like she didn't recognize me. Maybe she didn't. In her mind, I was still the quiet sister. the one who left, the one who didn't understand how family works. But at that moment, I was the woman who walked in and took what was hers. I inserted the key into the lock, the same one I'd kept on my keychain for more than 10 years, just out of habit. And now, it fit again. Only this time, the door opened to my home. When I stepped inside, the first thing that hit me was the smell of old air. That's what emptiness smells like. A thin mix of dust, faded summer curtains, and the musty wood of a floor more than 40 years old. I took a few steps forward. My shoes crunched softly over leftover debris. On the walls, photos in old frames. Mom, Dad, Sarah smiling at a picnic in 2003. I wasn't in the picture. I remember taking the photo back then. As always, in the kitchen, an overturned chair, a chipped sink, a box of useless papers. The old fridge was silent. I opened the door. Inside was only an empty egg tray and a dried-up magnet that said, "Family First." In the living room, a torn magazine, a broken floor lamp, and dust. Lots of dust. It lay everywhere, on shelves, on windowsills, on the past. I blew a little dust off a bookshelf and saw To Kill a Mockingbird, the very copy I'd read in 8th grade. Mom used to say then, "You're our little bookworm," but with irony, not pride. Meanwhile, Sarah was learning to perform in a musical. I went upstairs. My old room. Empty. Just drawers, an old rug, dust, and thin light from the window. In one of the drawers, I found a folder. Inside school essays. My essay titled, "What Makes a Person Brave?" Grade A. Teacher's comment. Strong ideas. You write like someone twice your age. And next to it, a pencil note in Mom's handwriting, boring but smart. You know, I didn't feel anger or pain, just a slight tingling under my skin. As if someone had long touched my soul through gloves, and now, for the first time, I truly felt alive. I sat down on the floor, ran my hand over the wooden boards. Yes, this was the place where I was never heard. But now I didn't come here to ask. I came to own. I stood up, walked to the mirror in the hallway, the very one where Mom asked us every year to take a family photo before Christmas. And aloud, looking myself in the eyes, I said, "Now it's mine. Completely. No negotiations. No compromises. No quiet shadows. The house no longer belonged to the past. It belonged to me. Just like my story. At first, I thought I'd sell it. Get back what I invested, close the chapter, and move back to New York. But on the third morning in that house, I woke up, and for the first time in years, I didn't want to leave. It wasn't just a house. It was a turning point, a place where I chose myself for the first time. I didn't sell. Instead, I took off my blazer, rolled up my sleeves, and started renovating. At first, it felt strange, me in a dirty tank top, with a tape measure in one hand and coffee in the other, explaining to the contractor how I wanted to tear down the kitchen wall to open up the space. I found contractors through the local community. Some were former classmates, others had worked for my dad. Some were surprised, others respected me, especially when they saw me standing in the dust, with plans in hand, knowing the cost of every nail. 2 months later, we peeled the last plastic off the windows. Sunlight poured into the living room and the house became different. I became different too. That's when the idea came. I thought, if I could navigate taxes, loans, real estate, and legal fine print, then I could teach it. Especially to girls. The ones people always called quiet, unnoticeable, not business material. I applied for a grant from a local foundation. Found mentors. Partnered with the city college. 6 months later, I opened the doors. A community center for girls. We taught budgeting, how to speak at interviews, how to defend your ideas without raising your voice. I named it More Than Enough. A play on words. My last name, More. And the meaning. Because I was tired of feeling not enough. I wanted every girl who walked through those doors to know, you're not just good enough. You are more than enough. People started coming. Mothers brought daughters. Volunteers offered help. We got a write-up in the Canton Tribune. Sarah didn't come. No letters, no calls, no flowers for the opening. But you know what? I didn't wait. I wasn't even angry. Because now I had a home. Not just physically, but inside. A space where I'm not a shadow, not convenient silence, not the second daughter. I am the owner. The creator. The person who took the past and made it a foundation. It was an ordinary day. Almost spring, the end of March. My team and I had just finished a workshop on financial literacy. I was sitting in my office, reviewing reports, when I heard a soft knock on the glass door. I looked up, and there she was. Sarah, standing there as if soaked from the inside, in a dark gray coat, with bags under her eyes and a look I'd never seen on her before. Not anger, not condescension. Emptiness. I stepped out into the reception area. She said, "Hi." I nodded silently. I didn't know where else to go. Her voice trembled. I lost everything. The house is gone. The car, the boyfriend. He left, with debts, and my credit cards. I looked at her without interrupting. I know I messed up a lot. That's true, I said calmly. A silence hung between us. The very same silence that used to eat me up inside, but now it was my ally. I walked past her, opened the door to the room where the next workshop was taking place. Our center has a program. For those who want to start over? She blinked. That is for me? I looked her straight in the eyes. It's not a gift, it's a chance, like it is for everyone else. Sarah nodded, slowly, without her usual smugness. Thank you. I only said, not for me, for yourself. I went back into my office, closed the door behind me, Saturday down at my desk, stared at the screen. But inside me was a strange, warm chill. I wasn't seeking revenge. I simply wasn't playing by the old rules anymore. You know, at some point, revenge stops being the goal. You outgrow it. Like outgrowing old jeans or trying to earn someone's love. It's no longer about winning. It's about finally becoming yourself. Without looking back. Without a rematch. Without needing anyone to understand, apologize, or regret. You just take a step forward. And behind you, stay empty houses, photos without you, and a past that no longer controls your future. One day, I was invited for an interview with the local newspaper New York Beacon. The journalists wanted to know how I had not only bought back a house, but turned it into a support center for girls who, like I once was, felt lost in their families, in their dreams. I was sitting at a table in a cozy Brooklyn cafe where we had agreed to meet. Soft light from the window fell across the pages of my notebook, the same one I used to fill with thoughts, fears, and plans. Rachel, the journalist began, they call you the woman who reclaimed her voice through the walls of the past. What does that mean to you? I smiled and replied, it means I stopped waiting for someone else to recognize my worth. I didn't receive an inheritance, I continued, but I built one. My own home, my own life, my own strength. Without labels, without permission, without looking back at those who underestimated me. A few months later, I opened the doors to the Young Women's Empowerment Center, a place where girls could learn, dream, and grow stronger. Inside, there's laughter. Girls paint on giant sheets of paper. They're learning to write, to speak, and to stop being afraid of being themselves. On the wall, near the entrance, there's a small plaque. This house cost her a childhood, but she turned it into someone else's hope. Every day, I see in their eyes what I once searched for myself: confidence, support, and the freedom to be heard. And I know my story was never about winning a fight with my sister. It's about how you can turn pain into power and loss into the beginning of a new path. When I lock the center's door in the evening and the streets of New York glow under streetlights, a calm, steady silence fills the space. The kind of silence where it all began.